I'm going to teach you a quick and effective way to start soloing over any type of song, and it's going to require the least amount of music theory possible. And before we dive right in, be sure to stick around till the very end of the lesson because I've got a free gift for you and your guitar that you're going to love. Okay, so basically this soloing system narrows your options down to two basic musical categories, major and minor. And musically, you can say a whole lot with just major and minor, so we're going to start there. What it'll also do is help you narrow down what tonality you should go for whenever you hear a track that you want to solo over. Okay, so now let's relate this whole thing to the fretboard. So let's say we're in the key of A, all right? And we want to have our major and minor tonalities. What we're going to be using are these simple 4-note groups that we're going to be able to span over 3 octaves. So starting, if we're in the key of A, we're going to start with the minor tonality, right? Which is actually going to be borrowing just a fragment of the minor pentatonic scale. We're going to start with the 5th fret on the D string, then 7th fret, and then 5th fret and 7th fret on the G string. So just those 4 notes is what we're going to be working with. And you may be wondering, hey, 4 notes isn't enough to make a solo. Believe me, it is. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this 4-note grouping, we're going to expand it across 3 octaves. So we happen to be in currently the middle octave with this position here. So what we're going to do is find the lower octave of these 4 notes. So how to do that, we're just going to shift down 2 frets, 1, 2, and then down 2 strings, 1, 2. And we're going to play that exact same thing, and now we've played that exact pattern, and now we found those notes. So we're going to be 3rd fret and 5th fret on low E, and then 3rd and 5th on A. Same as these. Now we're going to find the upper octave. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to shift over 3 frets, right? From the 7th fret here on the G string, shift over 3 frets, and then go down 2 strings, 1, 2, and then we have... Now we're in the neighborhood of that 3rd octave. So it's 8th fret, 10th fret on B, and 8, 10 on high E. So we now have these 4 notes in 3 octaves. And this is just the minor tonality, right? This is more than enough to craft a solo. Just to prove it to you, before I even throw in any backing tracks, I'm gonna go ahead and just, I don't know, play something, see what happens. So that's our minor portion of this, right? And we use what I like to call the 3-for-1 octave system, right? Where we have just this one little box of notes, and then we expanded it across 3 octaves, right? So we're getting 3 for 1. We get this middle octave, this upper octave, then this lower octave. And now we get to learn the major portion of this, which uses the same system, right? We're just going to adjust where it sits on the fretboard. So we're going to shift from over here, right? When we were on between the 5th and 7th frets, we're going to be shifting down 1, 2, 3 frets here. So in this now middle octave area, in the major tonality, it's between the 2nd and 4th frets on the D and G string. For this middle octave part anyway, right? So we have 2nd fret, 4th fret on D, 2nd fret, 4th fret on G. So those are our 4 notes that we're going to expand using the 3-for-1 octave system. So finding the lower octave, we're going to shift down 2 frets, 1, 2, and then down 2 strings, up 2 strings, 1, 2, and then we're actually going to be entering into the territory of open strings. So we got open E, then 2nd fret, open A, 2nd fret. So same as these notes. Right? And just to kind of show you, even though it's open strings, just to show you how the pattern would look just like this, right? If this happened to be a fret over here. And so if we're going to find the upper octave, right, we shift over 3 frets, 1, 2, 3, and then down 2 strings, 1, 2, and then now we have 5th and 7th frets on the B and high E strings. Right, so that's our 3-for-1 octave system, right, for the major notes in the key of A. And just like with the minor ones, we can totally make a viable solo just using the major portion. But let's put this to the test. I'd say we have plenty of options to create a nice solo using major and minor tonalities. Now, Which you're actually going to be using and to what ratio you're going to be using each one really depends on the style of the track you're playing over. But we're going to start with a blues track, since it's pretty common to go back and forth to from major and minor almost on an equal level. So let's see how that works out. So in that example, I was sticking with what we had just learned and adding some liberties here and there as far as embellishing the notes. So you don't want to just, you don't want to do that because it's just static and it doesn't feel musical. The whole point of breaking the notes up like this and not using just a singular scale pattern is because this type of layout kind of forces you to not noodle so much, right? It's easy to go up and down a scale in a linear fashion when you have all of the notes laid out in a very ergonomic pattern. But in this case, they're a little more spread out, right? And it's just the same 4 notes in 3 octaves. So it forces you a little bit more to really milk those notes and find some creative uses of them. And that's why I say, you have full free reign to do little things like bends, vibratos, slides, that kind of thing, just to make them seem interesting and feel authentic. And hey, real quick, if you're getting a lot of value out of this lesson, be sure to hit that like button and consider subscribing to our YouTube channel if you haven't already. It really helps us out and lets me know that you're enjoying these lessons and that I should be making more of them for you. All right, let's get back to it. With the blues, we were able to get away with a more equal ratio between major and minor, but let's switch to something that really heavily prefers one or the other. So in that example, that was more of a pop rock style backing track, definitely favored the major tonality more so than the minor. But I still wanted to find places to, throw the minor in there, even though it was going to be in select spots. So I tried to just lean heavily on major, and then when the backing track shifted a little bit, then maybe that was a good time to just kind of throw in a little bit of minor. But I kind of had a feeling that if I stayed there too long, it would just start sounding a little too bluesy and it would no longer fit the style of the track. And by the way, the key of that backing track was the key of E, so I adjusted accordingly to fit that key. So where I was, essentially, if we were to start with the minor tonality, further up here on the fretboard, the middle octave part's going to be 12 and 14 on D and G. All right, and then the lower octave is going to be between 10 and 12 on the A and low E strings. All right. And then in the upper octave, 3 frets over, 1, 2, 3, down 2 strings. So between 15 and 17 on the B and high E strings. And for the major tonality, we're going to be between the 9th and 11th frets on the D and G strings. All right, that's in the middle octave of it. Then lower octave is between 7 and 9 on low E and A. Right, upper octave is going to be between 12 and 14 on B and high E. And now as a final example, why don't we switch to a style of backing track that tends to favor more minor pentatonic than major. So in that example, it was more of a straight ahead rock kind of sound, right? Which I think tends to favor minor pentatonic because minor pentatonic sounds a little meaner. You know, when you start getting into the major tonality, it brings in that sort of happy sound, which, you know, isn't always the most rock and roll. So what I did there was kind of the inverse of what I did in the previous track. I was leaning heavy on the minor pentatonic, right, using the minor tonality of our little system here. And then once I felt like I could throw in just a little bit of major stuff here, just to quote it, and then go right back to the minor pentatonic so that it kind of came home before it got a little too distracting where I was just spending way too much time in the major tonality. And as you may have noticed, that backing track brought us right back to the key of A. So to sum it all up, this simple method of soloing allows you to play over any style of song. All you have to do is think to yourself, does this prefer major or minor? And of course, if you don't really know, just by listening, you can just start playing and just use trial and error, kind of decide for yourself. Because your ears will tell you if something sounds good or not, if something works musically or not. So, you know, trust your instincts. And if you find that, you know, you tend to prefer how the major tonality sounds over a specific style of track or how minor tonality sounds over another style of track, that'll kind of help you narrow things down so that way in the future when you start playing over tracks of similar styles, you already kind of have an inventory of like what's going to work between major and minor. And you don't even have to worry about getting too into the weeds as far as, you know, those like even more complex tonalities like using the modes and stuff like that. That's all great and that stuff will obviously come, but you know, right now, major and minor, you can cover a whole lot of ground. I could argue most of what you know as far as music just goes between those two. So you got more than enough to work with right now. Now, what if I told you that you can take what you learned today and apply it to any musical key you can possibly think of and expand it even further so that you're playing not only over any song, but you're playing it with comfort, ease, and confidence? Now, I just so happen to have the very thing that'll get you there. Remember that free gift I was telling you about? Well, got it right here. This bad boy is the fretboard conveyor belt. It's a system that has helped thousands of guitar players online learn how to name the notes on the fretboard and play in any musical key under the sun. And you're gonna get a free copy today. Be sure to click here to claim that free copy or check the link in the description box. And with that said, I want to thank you for hanging out with me today. I hope you've enjoyed this lesson as much as I've enjoyed bringing it to you. I'm Eddie with Guitar Mastery Method, and I look forward to seeing you in the next lesson.